In 1922, Rosh Hashanah fell on September 23rd. That day, my grandfather, David Klirsfeld, arrived on the shores of the United States. He came from Maastricht, which was then part of Poland. He came on his own. The rest of his family remained in Europe. My grandfather died in 1968, a few months after I was born. I didn't know him, but I heard a lot about him from my mother and siblings. They called him Papi. My mother told me that Papi would transfer money to his family in Europe. He received receipts confirming that the money had indeed arrived. When the war broke out, he stopped receiving them, but continued to transfer funds in the hopes that they were somehow reaching their destination. When the magnitude of the destruction in Europe became clear, and Papi hadn't heard from anyone, he assumed that none of his family had survived. That's what I had heard until a few years ago. My mother added one detail. She told me that Papi had told her he had a sister who immigrated to Palestine, where she died in childbirth. I asked my mom if the baby survived, but she didn't know. I asked if Papi's sister had any other children before she died. She didn't know that either. The details were very vague. A few months ago, I decided to do some research and see if I could find relatives here in Israel. I opened Yad Vashem's website. I typed in the database Papi's last name and his hometown. On the screen, the name Shmuel Klirsfeld from Maastricht appeared. I quickly opened the passenger list of the ship that Papi took to New York that I'd found a few years ago on the internet. It included a listing for his father. It read S. Klirsfeld. Going back to the Yad Vashem database of victims' names, I clicked on Shmuel Klirsfeld, and a page of testimony documenting his particulars and the circumstances of his murder came up. I immediately called my mom and asked her if she knew the name of her grandfather that she'd never met. Of course, she said, his name was Shmuel. I asked her if she remembered her grandmother's name. She told me that my sister Gail was named for her. Her name was Gittel. I was staring at the page of testimony that recorded the name of the wife of Shmuel Klirsfeld from Maastricht. It said Gittel. With a shiver down my spine and a quiver in my voice, I told my mother that I was staring at a record that documented her grandfather's murder. Even over the phone, I could tell she was as taken aback as I was. The page of testimony included the details of the one who filled it out. Her name was Branya Kahana. Her address, Shikun Amami Gimel, Derech HaShalom number 8, Tel Aviv. The page was filled out on June 5th, 1956. It said that she was the cousin of Shmuel Klirsfeld. More searches on Yad Vashem's database uncovered more and more family who had perished in the Holocaust, and Branya documented them one after the other. I pulled out a pen and a piece of paper and started to sketch a family tree. Shmuel Klirsfeld's father was named Joseph. Joseph had a brother, Israel Klirsfeld. Branya Kahana was the daughter of Israel Klirsfeld. Indeed, Branya and my great-grandfather were cousins. I wondered if Branya could still be alive. What about her descendants? I started looking for her and her family on the web. Before long, I discovered that Branya had passed away in the 1980s. With the aid of Google and MyHeritage.com, I found a family tree that listed Branya's children and grandchildren. I was able to track down and contact her grandson, Arik. Arik told me that Branya had 2 sons and a daughter. Those 3 had in turn produced Branya's grandchildren and great-grandchildren. They were a big family spread throughout Israel, but very close at heart. Arik and I arranged the meeting with his father, Meir, and some other members of the family at Meir's apartment in Tel Aviv. The meeting was quite moving. In the middle, I decided to call my mom so she could participate in the family reunion. I told her that I was sitting next to Meir, whose mother, Branya, wrote out the page of testimony preserving her grandfather's memory at Yad Vashem. The Kahana family interrupted me to correct me. The handwriting on Shmuel Klirsfeld's page of testimony was Meir's. At his mother's side, and at her instruction, Meir himself filled out the pages. With a lump in my throat, I corrected myself and told my mom that I was sitting next to Meir, who recorded the page of testimony. We all heard my mother's choked-up response through my speakerphone. Through Branya and Meir's documentation, I discovered that Joseph and Israel Klirsfeld had dozens of relatives in Europe. From Israel's side, only his daughter Branya had escaped. From Joseph's side, only his grandson David was left. Branya built her life in Israel and David in the United States. For more than 70 years, Branya and her descendants did not know about their cousins in America. For more than 70 years, David Klirsfeld and his descendants did not know about Branya and her family in Israel, until a group of them met in a moving reunion in a Tel Aviv apartment. A bigger meeting was scheduled to take place on Mount Gilboa on the holiday of Passover last week. The coronavirus unfortunately canceled the extended reunion, but we hope that with God's help, we will strengthen and expand our connection very soon.